She sits alone at a diner counter, quiet and contained. Most people walk past without noticing her. The limping woman in the faded jacket with tired eyes. But tonight, 7 bikers notice. They mock her silence, tug at the patch on her sleeve, laugh at her military bearing. When she finally speaks, it's just one sentence. "You've got 20 minutes before this place gets real crowded." They call her bluff and leave. 20 minutes later, black SUVs surround the diner. 6 men in civilian clothes enter. Their leader scans the room and asks only, "Where is she?" From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of quiet strength and unexpected revelations, subscribe for more untold stories that remind us heroes often walk among us unnoticed. The neon sign outside the Last Stop diner flickered in the gathering dusk, casting alternating shadows across the cracked asphalt parking lot. Located on the forgotten stretch of Highway 16 outside Meridian Falls, the diner existed in a perpetual time capsule of 1970s Americana. Vinyl booths worn thin from decades of shifting weight, countertops stained with countless coffee rings, and wood-paneled walls yellowed from years of cigarette smoke, despite the no smoking sign that had been posted for nearly a decade. Rain pattered against the large windows, distorting the headlights of passing trucks into elongated streaks of yellow. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed with inconsistent intensity, occasionally dimming, as if taking labored breaths. Merrick Thorne occupied the same corner stool she had claimed every evening for the past 8 months. Her slender frame belied the toned muscles visible beneath her faded navy jacket. She sat with military precision, spine straight, shoulders square, eyes constantly monitoring the entrance. The counter afforded her a clear sightline to both the front door and the kitchen exit. Her right leg remained planted firmly on the floor, while her left extended awkwardly, betraying a pronounced limp she made no effort to conceal. The plate before her contained the same meal she ordered every night: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans arranged in separate quadrants, nothing touching. She ate methodically, taking measured bites between which she would sketch in a weathered leather-bound notebook. The drawings appeared technical in nature, intricate schematics with precise measurements noted in cramped handwriting along the margins. "More coffee, hun." Juniper Reeves, the diner's longtime waitress and unofficial matriarch, approached with a steaming pot. In her early 60s with steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun, Juniper had the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much and expected little. Yet there was something in the way she addressed Merrick, a subtle deference that contradicted her otherwise no-nonsense demeanor. Merrick nodded once, sliding her mug forward without looking up from her notebook. "Quiet night," Juniper remarked, filling the cup. "Storm's keeping folks home." Another nod from Merrick. Juniper lingered a moment longer than necessary before moving away to attend to the only other occupied table, an elderly couple passing through town on their way to visit grandchildren. The relationship between Merrick and Juniper existed in a strange limbo of familiarity without friendship. They rarely exchanged more than a dozen words on any given evening, yet Juniper knew exactly how Merrick took her coffee: black, what she ate, the same meal always, and that she preferred silence to small talk. More importantly, Juniper never asked the questions that clearly burned in the minds of other regulars. About the limp, about the scars visible on Merrick's hands, about why someone with such obvious military bearing would choose to spend every evening alone in a roadside diner in the middle of nowhere. The bell above the door chimed as a young woman hurried in, shaking raindrops from her auburn hair. "Sorry I'm late, Juniper," she called, tying an apron around her waist. "Car wouldn't start again." "Third time this week, Wren," Juniper replied without heat. "Table 6 needs refills." Wren Holloway, 19 and newly hired, moved with the barely contained energy of youth. She navigated the narrow spaces between tables with practiced ease despite her recent employment. Unlike Juniper, Wren's curiosity remained unchecked by experience or discretion. "She's here again," Wren whispered as she passed behind Juniper at the service counter, nodding toward Merrick. "Same seat, same food, same everything." "Mind your business," Juniper murmured. "Some folks appreciate their privacy." "But don't you wonder?" Wren persisted. "Why does she always sit facing the door? And have you noticed how she checks everyone who comes in? Like she's memorizing faces or something." Juniper's response was firm. "Some habits don't break easy. Leave her be." The conversation, though hushed, carried in the quiet diner. Merrick gave no indication she heard, but her pencil paused momentarily over her notebook before resuming its precise movements. As she shifted to turn a page, her sleeve rode up, revealing a long, jagged scar that ran from wrist to elbow on her left arm. Beside it, partially obscured by the fabric, was what appeared to be an insignia. Not standard military issue, but something custom, stitched directly onto her skin rather than a uniform. The glimpse lasted only seconds before she adjusted her sleeve, concealing both scar and marking. Rain intensified outside, drumming against the roof with increasing urgency. Merrick checked her watch, an austere black timepiece with no visible brand markings, only a small red indicator light currently dormant, then closed her notebook and reached for the steel money clip in her jacket pocket. She placed exact change on the counter, including a generous but not ostentatious tip. The ritual was as familiar as everything else about her routine, down to the precise number of steps it would take her to reach the door, accounting for her limp. Tonight, however, the routine was interrupted. The sound came first, the distinctive rumble of multiple motorcycles approaching at speed, engines straining against the weather. Headlights swept across the interior as 7 bikes pulled into the parking lot, their riders dismounting with the exaggerated confidence of men who believe volume equated to authority. Merrick's hand hesitated over her money. For the first time since entering the diner, her expression changed. Not fear, but something closer to resignation, as if confrontation was an inevitability she had temporarily outrun, but never expected to avoid completely. Juniper moved closer, ostensibly to collect the payment. "Back door's unlocked," she said quietly. "If you want to avoid trouble." Merrick shook her head once. "Trouble finds its own way in." The diner door burst open with unnecessary force. 7 men entered in a wave of leather, denim, and rain. Their cuts identified them as the Ravagers, a motorcycle club with delusions of being an outlaw gang despite most members holding respectable day jobs in construction or sales. Weekend warriors playing at rebellion. Leading them was Drake Harlow, mid-40s with a physique that spoke of former military discipline now surrendered to civilian indulgence. His beard was meticulously groomed despite his otherwise disheveled appearance, and a faded army tattoo peeked from beneath his sleeve. Whatever service he had provided his country, it had clearly ended less honorably than it began. "Goddamn weather," Drake announced to the room at large, shaking water from his leather jacket. "Juniper, coffee all around. Make it Irish if you catch my meaning." His gaze swept the diner, taking inventory of the limited clientele before landing on Merrick. Something in her posture, the military precision she made no effort to disguise, caught his attention like a burr. "Well, look what we have here," he said, nudging his second-in-command, a man who went by Axel, despite the Mercedes key fob visible in his pocket. "Someone's a long way from base." Merrick resumed her meal, each bite as measured as before. The only acknowledgement of the newcomers was a slight tension across her shoulders, visible only to those trained to recognize the preparation for potential action. Drake and his companions claimed the large corner booth, their voices deliberately loud as they discussed their ride and their plans for continuing to a bar across the county line, known for lax closing times. Alcohol was already evident in their movements, slightly exaggerated gestures, loosened inhibitions. They had been drinking before arrival and showed no inclination toward moderation. Wren approached their table with visible reluctance, taking their orders with professional politeness despite the unnecessarily crude remarks directed her way. Juniper watched from behind the counter, one hand resting near the phone. "Don't cause trouble tonight, Drake," she warned as he approached the counter for napkins. "Just have your coffee and move on." Drake offered an exaggerated bow. "Yes, ma'am. We're just warming up before continuing our journey. No intention of disturbing your fine establishment." The mock respect might have been convincing if not for the way his gaze drifted again to Merrick, a calculation forming behind the artificial joviality. As Juniper returned to the kitchen, Drake made a deliberate detour past Merrick's stool. His trajectory, too precise to be accidental, brought his shoulder directly into contact with hers. Coffee sloshed from Merrick's cup onto the counter. "Didn't see you there, soldier girl," Drake said with exaggerated surprise. "What's your deal anyway? Too good to look at us?" The diner went quiet. Even the elderly couple paused mid-conversation to observe the developing confrontation. Merrick remained silent, reaching for a napkin to methodically clean the spilled coffee. Her movements were precise, economical, and utterly calm. The actions of someone who had faced far worse than an intoxicated biker with something to prove. This apparent dismissal only intensified Drake's focus. Men like him required reaction, needed their provocations acknowledged to feel effective. Silence was more challenging than any retort. "Asked you a question," he pressed, leaning closer. "What unit were you with? Must not have been anywhere that saw action, considering how jumpy you are around a little noise." Still no response. Merrick's attention remained fixed on her task, as if Drake were no more significant than the rain outside. Axel joined his leader, drawn by the potential for entertainment. His attention caught on Merrick's notebook, still open to a page filled with schematics. "What's this?" he asked, reaching for it. "Drawing up battle plans?" In the first display of truly quick movement, Merrick closed the notebook before his fingers could make contact. The action was smooth, controlled, but unmistakably deliberate. Not panic or fear, but the calm assertion of a boundary. What Axel had glimpsed in that brief moment wasn't immediately identifiable. Not standard weapons designs, but something more complex. Integrated systems with biomechanical elements, equations running along the margins in a shorthand notation unfamiliar to civilian engineering. Drake's hand reached for the notebook Merrick had now tucked beside her plate. The movement was telegraphed, almost performative in its aggression. A man used to intimidation rather than true combat. The diner's atmosphere shifted, temperature unchanged, yet suddenly every surface seemed charged with potential energy. Juniper froze mid-step, a coffee pot suspended between counter and service station. Wren backed against the wall, instinctively removing herself from whatever was about to unfold. As Drake's fingers brushed the leather cover, the camera would have captured the almost imperceptible change in Merrick's expression. Not anger or fear, but a cold calculation taking hold. Simultaneously, a small light on her watch pulsed once, a silent acknowledgement of crossed thresholds. "That would be your second mistake," Merrick said, her voice unexpectedly soft, but carrying the absolute clarity of command. It was the first time she had spoken above a whisper within the diner, and the effect was immediate. Even Drake hesitated, hands still extended, but progress arrested by surprise. "And what was my first?" he asked, recovering quickly but already on defensive footing, having expected either submission or blustering resistance, not this calm assertion of control. Merrick's gaze lifted to meet his directly for the first time. Her eyes, gray as gunmetal, revealed nothing except absolute certainty. "Walking through that door." The words hung in the air, unadorned by threat or emotion, yet somehow more effective for their simplicity. Several of Drake's companions shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware they had miscalculated something fundamental about the woman before them. Drake, however, was committed to his course. Backing down now would cost him authority among his followers. He laughed, a forced sound that echoed unnaturally in the silent diner. "Pretty bold for someone outnumbered 7-1, he observed, straightening to his full height. "What are you going to do? Call for backup? Radio in an airstrike on Juniper's diner?" The mockery found no purchase. Merrick simply returned her attention to her coffee, dismissing him as effectively as if he had ceased to exist. This, more than any response, ignited genuine anger. Drake's facade of amused superiority cracked, revealing the insecurity beneath. He moved closer, deliberately invading her personal space. "What unit were you with?" he demanded again, voice hardening. "Probably kitchen staff, right? Playing dress-up soldier? I was 3rd Infantry Division, saw actual combat while people like you served coffee at headquarters. It was a lie. Anyone with genuine service experience would have recognized it immediately. But Drake counted on civilian ignorance to bolster his stolen valor. Merrick stood, the movement smooth despite her obvious limp. She reached for her jacket, clearly intending to leave rather than engage further. This rational de-escalation only fueled Drake's determination to provoke a reaction. He stepped directly into her path, his companions moving to flank him in practiced formation. The elderly couple hurriedly paid their bill and departed, sensing the inevitable escalation. "Leaving so soon?" Drake taunted. "We're just getting acquainted." Merrick's eyes performed a rapid assessment. Distances, positions, potential weapons, exits. It wasn't the panicked calculation of someone seeking escape, but the professional evaluation of a tactician considering optimal approaches. Juniper attempted. Intervention, moving from behind the counter with surprising speed for her age. "That's enough, Drake. She's a paying customer, same as you." "Stay out of this, Juniper," Drake warned without looking away from Merrick. "Just curious about our local hero here. Wants to sit in here every night looking down on everyone with that military stick up her ass. Figure she owes us some conversation at least." "She doesn't owe you anything," Juniper insisted, positioning herself between them. Drake pushed her aside, not violently but with enough force to make his dismissal clear. The action crossed a line, disrespect transforming into potential danger. Merrick's right hand touched the countertop, fingers splaying slightly as if testing its stability. When they settled, a subtle vibration traveled from her watch through her wrist and into her palm, a technological response to an unspoken command. "Move aside," she said to Drake, voice unchanged in volume, but now carrying an undercurrent of something that made two of his companions step back instinctively. "Or what?" Drake challenged, emboldened by alcohol and an audience. His gaze dropped to her left arm, where her sleeve had again shifted to partially reveal the unusual insignia. With surprising quickness, he grabbed her wrist, turning it to expose the marking. "Let's see what kind of hero you really are," he said, tugging the fabric. "What's this supposed to be? Some special forces patch you bought online?" The insignia tore partially as the fabric gave way. What became visible wasn't standard military identification, no conventional unit designation or rank indicator. Instead, it appeared to be a custom design, incorporating elements of advanced technology with ancient symbolism. A quantum circuit pattern surrounding what resembled a phoenix, all rendered in black and silver, directly onto her skin, through some method more permanent than tattoo, but more flexible than scarification. The room went suddenly, completely silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. Juniper, still recovering her balance from being pushed aside, whispered urgently, "Stop! You don't know who she is." Drake laughed, though the sound contained less confidence than before. "And who exactly is she?" Merrick finally looked up, her expression unchanged but somehow more focused, like a lens adjusting to bring a target into perfect clarity. "You've got about 20 minutes before this place gets real crowded," she said quietly. The smallest member of Drake's group, a wiry man called Lark, who had remained largely silent throughout the confrontation, suddenly paled. Unlike the others, something about Merrick's statement registered as significant, a recognition that escaped his companions. "Drake," he said, voice uncertain. "Maybe we should go." "Go?" Drake echoed incredulously. "Because Little Miss Special Forces here is threatening us with imaginary backup. In case you haven't noticed, we're 30 miles from the nearest military installation, and I doubt she's got a battalion on speed dial." He turned back to Merrick with renewed bravado. "Nice bluff, soldier girl. Let me guess, Navy SEAL, Green Beret, or maybe one of those secret black ops warriors Hollywood loves so much." Merrick didn't respond, simply maintained eye contact with an unnerving steadiness. After a moment of this silent standoff, Drake's discomfort became evident despite his continued laughter. "Come on, boys. Let's leave G.I. Jane to her coffee. Some people can't take a joke." With exaggerated mock salutes and continued commentary, the bikers moved toward the exit. Drake, determined to have the last word, turned at the door. "If your imaginary friends show up, tell them the Ravagers said hello. We'll be at Buckley's down the highway if they want to discuss manners." With that parting shot, they departed into the rain. Through the windows, their continued laughter was visible if not audible as they mounted their motorcycles. Inside, the diner remained unnaturally quiet. The few remaining customers stared at Merrick with a mixture of curiosity, concern, and, in some cases, newfound wariness. To their collective surprise, she calmly returned to her stool and resumed eating, movements as measured as before. The only indication that anything unusual had occurred was a slight adjustment to her sleeve, concealing once more the torn insignia and whatever it represented. Juniper approached cautiously, coffee pot still in hand, though she made no move to refill Merrick's cup. "Should I call someone?" she asked quietly. "Already done," Merrick replied without elaboration. As if in confirmation, the small light on her watch pulsed softly. Not a single acknowledgement this time, but a continuous rhythmic signal. Activation rather than alert. The elderly couple who had hurriedly departed during the confrontation had been replaced by